Captain Ralvek stretched in his command chair, the neural interfaces along his spine tingling as they synced with the ship's systems. The bridge of the Zaratha's gaze hummed with quiet efficiency, the Ovalari patrol vessel cutting through the inky blackness of the outer rim with predatory grace. Captain, anomalous object detected at coordinates 87-42-19. Announced Sensor Officer Telvax, her six-fingered hands dancing across the holographic interface. Small vessel, adrift. No active power signatures, no distress beacon. Ralvek's ridge-lined, forehead creased. Magnify. The main view screen shimmered, focusing on a distant speck that resolved into a small, asymmetrical craft. Its hull was pockmarked with micrometeor impacts, and its design was unmistakable even to Ralvek's alien eyes. Human, he said, the word itself carrying a note of dismissal. Run a full diagnostic. Lieutenant Daravi, the vessel's second-in-command, tilted her elongated head. Preliminary scans confirm human manufacturing. Obsolete design, approximately scout class. Civilian research model, perhaps. Ralvek chuckled, the sound echoing in the immaculate bridge. Humans still send toys into deep space. He rose from his chair, his tall, angular frame towering over the holographic display. What business does such a primitive vessel have this far from their territory? The bridge crew shared knowing glances. Humans were the galactic newcomers, tolerated within the Council purely for political expediency. Their technology was rudimentary, their ships clumsy amalgamations of materials that any Ovalari engineering student would consider embarrassingly inefficient. It appears to be derelict, Captain, Daravi observed. No life signs detected. Ralvek's twin hearts quickened with interest. The Ovalari Empire's jurisdiction over this sector gave him every right to investigate and potentially salvage abandoned vessels. Human technology might be primitive, but their artifacts sometimes fetched handsome prices in certain markets, if only as curiosities. Prepare the tractor beam, he ordered. We'll bring it aboard for inspection. Compliance, Captain, Daravi nodded, relaying the order to the engineering deck. As the tractor beam engaged, casting a pale blue light across the void, Sensor Officer Telvax suddenly stiffened. Her pupils dilated, and the ridge along her neck flared, a physiological sign of surprise among the Ovalari. Captain, she whispered, her voice uncharacteristically strained. I'm detecting anomalous energy readings from within the human vessel. Ralvek frowned. Elaborate. Telvax's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the sensor parameters. The initial scan showed no active power signatures, but a deep penetration scan is revealing impossible energy levels. The core reading exceeds our calibration scales. That can't be right, Daravi interjected. Recalibrate the sensors. I've already done so. 3 times, Telvax replied, her voice tight. The readings are consistent. The bridge fell silent as the data appeared on the main screen. A pulsing, writhing mass of energy signatures that dwarfed even the Zaratha's gaze's formidable reactor output. The silence stretched as each officer processed what they were seeing. Impossible, Ralvek finally murmured, his earlier mockery forgotten. No human vessel could contain such power. Yet the scan didn't lie. Somewhere within that small, battered ship drifted a power source that couldn't exist. Chief Engineer Feline entered the bridge with the tightly controlled stride of someone fighting to maintain composure. The veins along her temples pulsed with a blue-green light, a sign of intense neural activity among her kind. Captain, I've analyzed the sensor data personally, she said without preamble. The energy core inside the human vessel exceeds the output capacity of our own flagship. Yet there's no heat signature, no radiation leakage, nothing that conforms to any known physical reaction. Ralvek's jaw tightened. Could it be a sensor malfunction? Unlikely, Feline replied. I've run triple redundant diagnostics. Something extraordinary is happening aboard that vessel, but defies our understanding of physics. Enhance the scan, Ralvek ordered. I want structural analysis, material composition, everything. The main screen flickered as deeper scan protocols initiated. Data streams cascaded across the display, painting a picture of the human vessel that became increasingly bizarre with each passing moment. Captain, Telvax's voice was barely audible. The vessel's internal structure. It doesn't conform to Euclidean geometry. Explain, Ralvek demanded. The interior spaces don't match the exterior dimensions. There are sections inside that vessel that shouldn't fit. Daravi leaned forward, her voice tight. And there's more. A portion of the interior isn't responding to radar at all, as if it simply doesn't exist. Within our observable reality. Feline approached the sensor station, her expression grave. The hull material is also demonstrating impossible properties. Its molecular structure appears to be adapting to our scanning frequencies in real time. It's as if the ship is learning how we perceive it. Ralvek felt a cold sensation spread through his limbs, the evolutionary remnant of an ancient fear response. Whatever this human vessel was, it violated fundamental principles of reality as the Ovalari understood them. Prepare a boarding party, he decided. Full containment protocols. I want to know what we're dealing with. Captain, Daravi protested, given the anomalous readings. That is precisely why we need eyes inside. Ralvek cut her off. If humans have developed technology beyond our understanding, the Empire must know immediately. Within 20 minutes, a 6-member team in gleaming containment suits had departed for the human vessel. Their helmet cameras transmitted feeds directly to the bridge, showing the pitted, weathered exterior of the ship as they approached the airlock. Atmospheric integrity confirmed, reported Security Chief Vorin, the team leader. Proceeding with entry. The team breached the airlock with practiced efficiency. Inside, the corridors were dimly lit by emergency lighting, casting long shadows. The vessel appeared abandoned, with no signs of recent habitation. No evidence of structural damage or life support failure. Vorin noted, his voice slightly distorted by the comm system. It's as if the crew simply left. Proceed to the core, Ralvek instructed. Find the source of those energy readings. The team advanced through narrow corridors, their movements cautious. The ship's interior seemed ordinary enough, until they reached a junction where a corridor appeared to bend at an impossible angle. This doesn't make sense, one team member muttered. According to the schematics, we should be outside the hull right now. Focus on the mission, Vorin chided. We're approaching the central chamber. The team's vital signs, monitored on the bridge, showed elevated stress levels as they navigated the increasingly disorienting interior. The corridor widened into what appeared to be a control room, filled with dormant consoles and status displays rendered in unfamiliar human script. Energy signature strongest beyond that bulkhead, Vorin reported, indicating a sealed doorway at the far end of the chamber. As the team approached the door, the lights in the corridor began to flicker. Static crackled through the comm channel. Something's happening. Vorin's voice came through broken and distorted. The air, it feels wrong. Heavy, like it's thinking. Withdraw immediately, Ralvek ordered, a surge of concern overriding his curiosity. But it was too late. The team's vital signs spiked simultaneously. Their helmet cameras showed nothing but strobing lights and fractured images, as if reality itself was coming apart around them. It's not. Vorin's voice dissolved into static, then returned, barely a whisper. It's not a ship. It's dreaming. The comm channel went dead. On the vital sign monitors, 6 heartbeats flatlined in perfect synchrony. The silence on the bridge of the Zaratha's gaze was absolute. No officer moved. No breath seemed to be drawn as the implications of what they had witnessed settled over them like a shroud. Ralvek was the first to break the stillness. Prepare another team. I will lead this one myself. Captain, Daravi's voice was tight with barely controlled fear. We've just lost 6 officers to an unknown phenomenon. Protocol dictates. Protocol, Ralvek cut her off, does not account for what we've encountered. I will not abandon our people without understanding what happened to them. His decision was reckless, perhaps, but Ralvek recognized the historic significance of this moment. Whatever lay within that human vessel had the potential to redefine the Ovalari's understanding of reality and their place within the galactic hierarchy. Chief Feline, Commander Daravi, you're with me, he ordered. Lieutenant Telvax, you have a bridge. If we don't return within 1 hour, destroy the human vessel and transmit all sensor data to Imperial Command. The boarding was conducted in tense silence. As their shuttle docked with the human ship, Ralvek felt an inexplicable sensation, as if they were being observed, evaluated. The airlock cycled open, revealing the same dimly lit corridor the first team had entered. Life support functional. Atmosphere Earth standard, Feline reported. No sign of contamination or biological hazards. They proceeded cautiously, following the route of the first team. The eerie silence was broken only by the soft hum of their containment suits and the occasional ping of Feline's scanning device. The interior architecture is... Daravi struggled to find the words. Fluid. These corridors aren't matching the schematics we generated from our scans. When they reached the junction where the previous team had reported spatial anomalies, Ralvek understood what they meant. The corridor seemed to bend into itself, creating a perspective that strained the eyes and mind to comprehend. It's as if space itself is being folded, Feline whispered. As they pressed forward, the walls around them began to shimmer. At first, Ralvek thought it was a malfunction in his helmet display. But then he realized the corridor itself was changing. The metal panels rippled like water, and within their reflective surfaces, images formed. They were witnessing Earth, but not the Earth as depicted in Council records. This was Earth under attack, its cities engulfed in what appeared to be living shadows that devoured light and matter alike. Humans fought desperately against these encroaching entities, their weapons seeming pitifully inadequate against the amorphous darkness. What are we seeing? Daravi gasped. Some kind of recording, Feline suggested, though uncertainty tinged her voice. A simulation. The images shifted, showing human scientists working frantically in laboratories, developing technologies that made no sense to Ovalari perception, devices that seemed to manipulate the fabric of reality itself. They reached the control room, finding it exactly as the first team had reported. The sealed bulkhead beyond, however, was now open, revealing a chamber bathed in soft, pulsing light. As they approached the threshold, a figure materialized before them. A young human female in what appeared to be a formal uniform, her features composed yet alert. Despite appearing solid, Ralvek could see the wall through her form. "Greetings, visitors," she said, her voice resonating with an odd harmonic quality. "I am Astra, one, interface guardian of the Thanatos." Ralvek stepped forward. "I am Captain Ralvek of the Imperial vessel Zaratha's Gaze. What happened to my survey team?" The hologram's expression remained neutral. "They were processed. Their neural patterns have been integrated into the Thanatos' awareness matrix." "Processed?" Daravi's voice rose. "You killed them." "Not killed," Astra, one corrected. "Transformed. The distinction is significant." "What is this vessel?" Ralvek demanded. "Our sensors detect impossible energy readings." "The Thanatos is not damaged, as you initially assumed," Astra, one explained. "It is transitioning between reality states, a necessary function of the dream ships developed by humanity to guard against incursions by the Silence." "The Silence," Feline repeated. The hologram gestured, and the chamber around them seemed to dissolve. They found themselves suspended in what appeared to be deep space, but with a fundamental wrongness to it. The stars were too close, too bright, and between them moved shapes that defied comprehension. Entities that existed partially in multiple dimensions, sliding between layers of reality. The Silence are extra-dimensional entities that feed on consciousness. Astra, one explained. Humanity fought them alone for generations before establishing contact with the wider galactic community. The vision shifted, showing humans developing biotechnological vessels, ships that were part machine, part organic consciousness. Ships that could perceive and manipulate the boundaries between realities. To combat entities that exist between dimensions, we created vessels that could do the same. Astra, one continued. The Thanatos is one such vessel, capable of entering a dormant state to avoid detection, but when awakened, it becomes a weapon beyond conventional understanding. The vision faded, returning them to the chamber. Ralvek struggled to process what he had seen. Why have we never heard of these? Silence, he asked. Because humanity contained a threat. Astra, one replied simply. At great cost, the incursion was pushed back to the dimensional boundaries. The dream ships patrol these boundaries, ensuring the silence does not return. A sudden tremor ran through the vessel, causing the Ovalari officers to brace themselves against the near surfaces. What was that? Darabi demanded. Astra One's expression changed, subtle but unmistakable concern crossing her artificial features. The Thanatos' transition has drawn attention. The silence has sensed our energy signature. A second, more violent tremor shook the vessel. On the far wall of the chamber, a patch of absolute darkness began to spread. Not like a stain, but like a hole being torn in the fabric of reality itself. We must return to our ship immediately, Ralvek ordered, his instincts screaming danger. It is too late, Astra, one stated. The dimensional breach has already begun. The silence is coming. Outside, visible through the viewport, space itself seemed to warp and twist. A rift appeared, not like any spatial anomaly Ralvek had ever encountered, but a literal tear in the cosmos. Through it emerged things, not ships, not creatures in any conventional sense, but entities of semi-solid darkness that changed shape as they moved, as if struggling to maintain coherence in this reality. The Zaratha's gaze, Ralvek gasped, watching as a ship began firing defensive weapons at the approaching entities. The energy beams passed through the silence, as if they were nothing but shadows. Your weapons cannot harm them. Astra, one explained. They exist partially outside conventional physics. On the view screen, the officers watched in horror as the silence surrounded their vessel. The sleek Ovalari warship, pride of the Imperial fleet, suddenly looked fragile and vulnerable as the entities began to press against its hull. Where they touched, the metals seemed to age and decay, molecular bonds weakening. Your crew will die. Astra, one stated with clinical detachment. Unless what? Ralvek demanded. Unless the Thanatos awakens fully. Before Ralvek could respond, the chamber around them began to transform. The walls, floor, and ceiling seemed to breathe, pulsing with a rhythm like a massive heartbeat. Lines of luminescence spread through the structure, forming patterns that resembled neural pathways. What's happening? Feline whispered, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. The Thanatos is awakening. Astra, one replied. Her form began to change, growing more substantial, more present. I suggest you prepare yourselves. The experience can be disorienting for non-humans. The light within the ship intensified, not painfully bright, but somehow deeper, as if penetrating beyond the visible spectrum into realms of perception the Ovalari had never evolved to comprehend. Ralvek felt a pressure building inside his skull, not painful, but insistent, like a voice too vast to be heard trying to make itself understood. Outside, the silence had nearly enveloped the Zaratha's gaze. Parts of the hull were visibly degrading, sections beginning to implode as the vacuum of space rushed in. Then, the Thanatos opened its metaphorical eyes. There was no sound, no explosion, nothing that Ralvek's senses could directly perceive, yet he felt it happen. A wave of pure consciousness emanated from the core of the vessel, expanding outward like ripples in a pond. Where it touched the silence, the entities recoiled as if burned. The wave continued to expand, gaining power and complexity. It was not energy in any conventional sense, but something more fundamental, a projection of pure will, of memory and purpose given form. The silence began to disintegrate, their amorphous bodies twisting and contorting as they tried to retreat from the advancing wave. Some managed to slip back through the dimensional rift, while others were caught, and simply, unmade, their existence negated on a fundamental level. As the wave reached the Zaratha's gaze, Ralvek expected his ship to suffer the same fate. Instead, the energy seemed to flow around the vessel, enveloping it in a protective cocoon. The hull damage stabilized, the molecular decay halted. Inside the Thanatos, reality itself seemed to bend. Ralvek found himself simultaneously within the human vessel, and yet observing from outside, as if his consciousness had been temporarily expanded beyond its physical confines. He glimpsed truths about the nature of existence that no Ovalari philosopher had ever conceived, layers of reality nested within each other like the petals of an infinite flower. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. Ralvek found himself on the bridge of the Zaratha's gaze, alongside Daravi and Feline. All three were unharmed, though their containment suits showed signs of exposure to extreme energy. What happened? Daravi managed, her voice shaking. How do we get back? Telvax, who had been left in command, stared at them in naked shock. Captain, we thought you were dead. Our sensors showed the human vessel. It just vanished. Ralvek turned to the view screen. Where the Thanatos had been, there was nothing, not even debris. It was as if the ship had never existed at all. Status report, he ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. Hull integrity at 78%, multiple systems damaged but functional, Telvax reported. No sign of the anomalous entities, no trace of the human vessel. Just normal space. Ralvek exchanged glances with Daravi and Feline. All three knew what they had witnessed, yet already the experience was beginning to blur in their minds, like a dream fading upon waking. Set course for the nearest Imperial outpost, Ralvek commanded, and prepare a full report for High Command. As the Zaratha's gaze limped away from the encounter site, Ralvek found himself touching a spot on his wrist where a strange, luminous mark had appeared, a symbol identical to the one he had glimpsed on Astra One's forehead during those final moments of awareness. The Imperial Review Board regarded Captain Ralvek with a mixture of suspicion and concern. The 7 senior officers sat in a semicircle, their expressions unreadable behind ceremonial masks that signified their neutrality in judgment. Let us be clear, Captain, the chief adjudicator began, his voice modulated to remove any emotional inflection. You claim that a derelict human vessel contained technology capable of manipulating dimensional reality, generating energy levels beyond our theoretical understanding, and defeating entities that you describe as extra-dimensional predators, entities for which we have no corroborating evidence. Ralvek stood at attention, his posture perfect despite the fatigue that had plagued him since the encounter. That is correct, adjudicator. And you further claim that this vessel, this Thanatos, vanished without trace, taking with it all physical evidence that might support your account. The sensor logs, Ralvek began, show significant corruption. Another board member interrupted, consistent with exposure to an electromagnetic pulse or similar weapon. The implication was clear. The data could have been manipulated. Ralvek felt a cold anger rising within him. My officers corroborate my account. Officers under your direct command, who might feel compelled to support their captain, the adjudicator noted. Medical scans of all 3 of you show unusual neural activity. The psychological division suggests your minds may have been affected by exposure to unknown technology. We know what we saw, Ralvek insisted. The adjudicator sighed, a sound rendered mechanical by his mask's filters. What you describe would fundamentally alter our understanding of human capabilities. You suggest they have been fighting a secret war against entities that threaten all sentient life, using technology that makes our most advanced systems look primitive by comparison. Yet they maintain the facade of a relatively unsophisticated species within the Council. Perhaps, Ralvek suggested, that is precisely what they wish us to believe. A murmur passed through the board members. Finally, the chief adjudicator leaned forward. The physical evidence cannot be ignored. Your ship sustained damage consistent with molecular degradation, a weapons technology unknown to our science. The energy readings, while corrupted, show patterns that defy explanation. And then there is the matter of your mark. Ralvek instinctively covered his wrist, where the luminous symbol continued to pulse with a light that seemed to emanate from beneath his skin. Medical science cannot explain it, the adjudicator continued. It appears to be integrated with your cellular structure, yet it is not biological in any sense we understand. A long silence followed as the board members conferred privately through their neural interfaces. Finally, the chief adjudicator spoke again. This board finds insufficient evidence to either confirm or deny your account, Captain Ralvek. In light of your exemplary service record, no sanction will be imposed. However, you're placed on indefinite medical leave pending further evaluation of your condition. Ralvek's jaw tightened, but he offered the formal bow of acceptance. Understand, adjudicator. This matter is classified at the highest level, the adjudicator added. You and your officers are forbidden from discussing it with anyone outside this proceeding. As Ralvek turned to leave, the chief adjudicator addressed him once more, his voice lower, personal. The modulation briefly disengaged. Off the record, Captain, do you truly believe what you've reported? Ralvek met the elder Ovalari's gaze. I believe, adjudicator, that we have greatly underestimated humanity. And I believe that may be exactly what they intended. 3 cycles later, Ralvek sat on the terrace of his ancestral home, overlooking the crystal spires of Ovalar Prime's capital. His forced retirement had brought an unexpected peace, though the memories of the Thanatos remained vivid in his dreams. The mark on his wrist pulsed occasionally, particularly when his thoughts turned to the encounter. He had come to understand it not as a brand or injury, but as a gift, a connection to something vaster than his species had yet comprehended. His personal terminal chimed, indicating a new development in the news feed he monitored. Another unexplained phenomenon had been reported in a distant sector, a momentary distortion in space-time that Imperial science vessels were rushing to investigate. Ralvek smiled faintly. He knew what they would find. Nothing. No trace. No evidence. Only the lingering echo of something that had passed between layers of reality. In his private journal, secured from Imperial surveillance, he had written only one entry since his return. Asterisk. If humans can create dreams that know how to fight, perhaps they have no need for war, for their dreams alone make darkness tremble. Asterisk. As the twin suns of his homeworld set, Ralvek raised his wrist to the fading light. The mark seemed to respond, glowing more intensely for a moment, as if acknowledging some silent communication across the vast gulf of space. Somewhere out there, the Thanatos continued its eternal patrol along the boundaries of reality. And humanity, those supposedly primitive newcomers to the galactic stage, kept their most profound secrets hidden behind a carefully constructed facade of technological modesty. Ralvek found himself hoping, against all logic and Imperial loyalty, that he might one day encounter them again, not as a captain of the Ovalari fleet, but as a seeker of truths that transcended the artificial boundaries between species. For in that moment when the Thanatos had awakened, he had glimpsed something his people had forgotten in their pursuit of technological superiority, that the greatest power in the universe was not found in weapons or energy sources, but in something the cosmos itself could not measure, the indomitable will to survive, to protect, to dream. And in that realization, Captain Ralvek, once a proud servant of the Ovalari Empire, found himself transformed, becoming something his former self would have never understood, an ally of humanity in spirit, if not in fact, watching the stars with new eyes and a profound respect for the species that sailed the cosmos in vessels born of dreams.